So I just wanted to share my journey with grief and my testimony of how God really came into my situation where I was the most broken I've ever been, and he really turned it all around. I felt like I've wanted to do this for at least a year, I would say, and I was a bit nervous because it's quite vulnerable to talk about this on the internet for everyone to see, and I didn't want to offend anyone by talking about this online, but I feel like if this can help anybody feeling what I felt, it's 100% worth it. In August 2019, one of my close friends from school passed away. He decided to end his life at the age of 17. And at least on my end, it came as a complete shock. I was not expecting it at all, and it really uprooted my whole life and made me have a lot of doubts and questions about life, God, just why things happen. I have grown up in a Christian household my whole life. I was raised in church. My whole family is Christian, and I guess I've been insanely blessed and lucky to have a pretty smooth sailing life for the most of it. I've never been through anything too dramatic that's made me doubt my faith and question why I believe, and I guess that's a good thing because, I have been incredibly blessed. However, going through this as one of my first experiences of death and loss, and it having to be, a 17-year-old friend of mine, it completely shook me. I've never had my faith tested in this way before, and so it had a huge impact on my life. I was so angry. There's many stages of grief, and I think that's why grief is such a hard thing to process, because it's constantly changing and it's so personal and subjective. You feel very lonely in that process because no one truly understands exactly how you're feeling. But I was so angry. I was angry at myself for not doing more, for not seeing it coming, for not telling him how much he means to me more often, and I was angry at him for feeling like this was his only option. And as you can imagine, that brought on different waves of guilt for even being angry at him. And most of all, I was angry at God. I was angry that he could let this happen. I started doubting not whether he was real, but the true love and intentions and plans that he actually has for my life. I had all the big questions of, if you love me, why did you let this happen to me? And I guess I wish I could sit here and just answer all those big life questions for you, but I can't. And I wish I could, but I can tell you that he is faithful, and he is a promise keeper, and he remains the same in all seasons. And I truly believe that now. And so battling with all these new emotions, new feelings of shame and grief and despair and brokenness that I hadn't felt this intense before. You can imagine it had a toll on me and, my school life, my social life, and whatever. Thankfully, God always has a plan. And a month later, I had my youth groups camp. Let me tell you, I wasn't super excited to go. I wasn't jumping for joy at the chance to see other people praising a God that I didn't even know if I believed in anymore. But thankfully I went, and on the second day I was in one of the afternoon sessions or night sessions, and I just remember looking at everyone being like, you're praising God now, but if you knew how I felt, if you knew what I was going through, you wouldn't be. And I remember so clearly being so sure of that. And then all of a sudden I thought about it and I was like, I feel so defeated. I feel so heartbroken, and it's been a month. It was only a month ago, and I already feel like I'm questioning the whole meaning of life. I couldn't fathom another few weeks, let alone years, of still feeling that same grief. And I had really no other choice but to humble myself in that moment and realize, India, you do not have the strength to get through this. You don't have the ability to do that. And I just had to depend on God in that moment and give it all to Him, everything I was feeling. And in that moment, I wish I could explain and express and allow you all to feel what I felt, but it was like this wave of peace just fell on top of me, and it didn't make sense. There was no way it was a natural, coincidental thing that I walked into that camp, not myself, hurt. And I left that camp feeling the happiest I'd ever felt in so long. That joy, that peace, that freedom is not just a time heals all wounds kind of thing. It wasn't, I fixed it, I did it. I truly can sit here confidently and tell you that there was nothing that could have helped me in that moment but God. If the only good thing that could come out of this situation was that my faith was tested, my faith was stirred, and it made me question why I believed it. Do I believe this because my parents believed it? Do I believe this because I was told to? Or do I believe it because I've experienced it? Do I believe it because I believe it? Like I said, I wish I could sit here and tell you these are the reasons why this happened, but I can't. I can't tell you why it happened, and I think that's such a huge aspect of faith, is that you believe in things without seeing it. You believe in things because you feel it, not because you have all the answers. If we had all the answers, that's not faith. And I'm choosing to believe, and I'm choosing to live my life anchored in faith because of how I felt that session, the before and after. I believe that Jesus came to this earth in human form so that He could take on the burdens that we as humans face, so He could understand and relate with us. He had friends that died and He wept for them. He was nailed to a cross. He was humiliated. He had people hating Him. He has the pain and human experiences that we have so that He understands us. And I think it's so refreshing to know that more than He loves you, He has a plan for you. He actually understands you. So that when you're crying alone in your room, like I was, we have someone that genuinely knows what we're going through and knows the hurt we're feeling. There's a scripture that talks about us going through trials as an opportunity for our faith to grow so that we can endure all things. Without that experience, that miracle over my life, then the next month when our family received a diagnosis of one of my family members having a medically incurable tumor, I believe that if I hadn't had the personal understanding that God can come through in impossible situations, then I would have been broken when I got that diagnosis. But I thank God that I had that experience and that miracle when I did, because I was able to receive that diagnosis. And I had fear first, but I was then able to see that diagnosis through God's perspective. Look at the miracles, look at the testimonies that can come out of this. My faith was stirred to believe again that what I've experienced, that peace, can be experienced in my family. I needed to be tested. He's not going to give us too much to handle. When we feel weak, that's when we can rely and fully depend on His strength. And I just want to remind every one of you that He loves you. Whether you've abandoned, whether you've rejected, whether you've run away from Him, I hope that's encouraged some of you. I know how you're feeling. I know the feeling of grief being such a lonely process, but you are not alone, and you don't have to be alone in this. That's my testimony.